Hey everyone, Dave here talking to you today about the real returns that we can expect on real estate. If we look at a surface level, we buy a $500,000 building. Let's say our annual cash flow is $5,000 a year or $417 a month. On the surface, this just isn't great, right? 1% return, 5,000 divided by 500,000. So you're asking, why would I ever do this? Well, first, we have to look at real estate because a leveraged buy. So let's say in this example, on your $500,000 property, you're putting 20% down or $100,000. Now your $5,000 a year is a 5% return. So it's 5,000 over 100,000, but you still might be asking, all this hassle, I have to do all this paperwork, set up an LLC. Oh my gosh, why would I ever do this? Right? Well, let's look at a second factor, which is cash flow doesn't count the fact that you're paying down the mortgage. And so in the first year, if you do, I don't want to put my assumptions in here, but let's say we have a 30-year mortgage, 6.25%, which is the prevailing rate here late in 2025. So we're going to pay down first year about $4,687 in that, or I'm sorry, $4,687 in that $400,000 that we initially borrowed. But we can't factor all of this into our math. If we eventually sell, we're going to have selling costs, let's figure 8% aggressively. Capital gains, let's say you're in the 15% capital gains bracket. So the net equity gain, really, that first year, the net amount you're paying down the mortgage, when we factor in, you're going to have taxes on the gain is, let's say, $3,665. Okay. So two-factor returns is, let's say, $5,000 plus the $3,665 in net mortgage payoff is a total return of $86.65. Our two-factor return at this stage is 8.7%. I can do better than that in stocks, Dave. Still not very excited here. Well, let's look at a third factor, which is in the background over long periods of time, real estate does appreciate in value. There is only so much land around. You can only put so much density in various urban areas. It is a generally steadily appreciating asset. And we couple that with the fact that we're getting that appreciation not on the $100,000 that we initially invested, but on $500,000, which is the total value of the building. So let's say we see 3% appreciation or $15,000 on that 500,000. But again, if we sell, we need to factor in selling costs, 8%, capital gains taxes, 15%. Net appreciation is 11,730. By the way, and I just want to go back to this first point, really, we probably don't have to factor in these things on this initial mortgage payoff because we're just paying down what we paid. But again, we're being really conservative with assumptions in this example. So you guys may be questioning that. I wanted to come back and talk about that. But here we definitely do need to factor in selling costs and capital gains taxes because this is on the piece of the property that is appreciating. So net appreciation here of 11,730. So let's total up three factors: 5,000 in cash flow, net mortgage payoff, property appreciation 11,730. Again, we think this guy here in the middle is probably understated. Total return of 20,395 on that $100,000 investment, and that is a 20.4% return. We are getting pretty excited here, right? Let's tack on a little tax love here. So, and again, we'll be conservative. Let's assume we can depreciate 80% of the purchase price or $400,000. This is done over 27 and a half years for a residential building. So the annual depreciation write-off we can take is about $14,500. Let's say you're in the 24% tax bracket. That generates $3,491 in tax savings a year. If we do go to sell, we have to worry about something called depreciation recapture. It means that a portion of the gain of the sale will probably be taxed at 25%. That rate may vary, but for this example, 25% rather than 15%. If we conservatively assume this wipes out 50% of the tax savings, in many cases, it's actually more. Or I'm sorry, it's actually less in percentage terms. So you still have a net larger tax benefit. We'd have a net tax benefit of $1,745 a year. So Let's roll it all together. 4 factors here. The total 22,141, a nice 22.1% return on this building. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to go buy my first property. And so you might say, okay, Dave, well, these are all great assumptions. Let's say that our first property isn't as good and we don't do as well in a variety of areas. All right, so we'll click over to Excel here. I've got our initial scenario over on the left, which is yielding the 22.1%. Let's make some worse assumptions. Let's assume this is only cash flowing $100 a month or $1,200 a year. Let's assume you're in the 20% capital gains tax bracket. So we're writing down the mortgage payoff benefit by this much again, although I think that's a conservative assumption. We probably shouldn't be. Let's also assume that we're only getting 2% property appreciation. So 10,000 instead of 15,000 year one. And again, we're still in the capital gains tax rate, so we're punishing it even harder. So our net gain there is 73.60. But we're probably going to get a little more tax love. We'll actually take the tax love down because we'll see we're only able to depreciate 70% of the building. But if we're in that 20% capital gains bracket, maybe we're also in the 30% bracket for our marginal tax rate. But if 50% of it gets wiped out, our net tax savings is 23.55. Roll all of it together. And in scenario 2, where again, we're only cash flowing $100 a month and we're only appreciating 2% a year, we're still making 14%. These are good investments, solid investments. So, again, scenario 1, 22.1%. This is admittedly harder to find currently. A property that's cash flowing $400 a month is not easy to find. It is possible. But scenario 2, 14%. If you do your homework well, buy the right building. Don't buy something with a lot of hidden deferred maintenance that you have to sink a lot of money into a building initially. This is fairly easy to find if you do your homework. And the final thing we'll talk about is, this is what's happening year one. There's a lot of upside with real estate. You get accelerating returns as rent increases, but the mortgage stays fixed. You get accelerating returns as the rate of mortgage payoff increases based on the amortization schedule. We know on the front end, we're paying almost all interest and very little principal. That steadily shifts in the favor of principal over time. We're getting compounding property appreciation. So year one, that 3% is 500,000 times 0.03 is 15,000. But then year 2, we have a new base of 515,000. So it's about 15.5. By year 3 already, because we're at that base, 530, we're at almost 16,000 in property appreciation. If you buy in the right market or at the right time in the cycle, you can definitely expect property appreciation well in excess of 3%. If you either, again, time things well or are in the right place. And then finally, unlike equities, taxes can be pretty much permanently avoided via 1031 exchanges, where you're moving to larger buildings over time and deferring taxes. And eventually, if you get sick and tired of managing real estate, you can go into something passive called a Delaware statutory trust, and your heirs will get a step up in basis, and you will never pay taxes and get to keep the entire tax benefit that you realize over time. So that is it for the real returns of real estate. Like and follow if you'd like to see more from me. Take care.